Hello, welcome back to the series of videos I'm doing to help with my issues with public speaking. And before I talked about other topics, but today I'm going to do a semi-informal movie review. And it's going to be a movie that's been out for, I think, 7 months now. That'd be Wonder Woman 1984. Now, why am I doing such an old film, you might ask? Well, I was just reminded of it, so that's why. Now, lots of people have already gone into the shortcomings of this film, so I'm not going to rehash everything. I'm just going to go over the 5 points I personally had with the whole film's problems. And most of these were coming from a writing standpoint. Okay, that's my background. So, first problem I'm going to talk about is this film should have embraced kill your darlings. That's a writer's phrase for when you're writing a story and you're in a drafting phase. And you have to make a decision to remove a scene to improve your pacing and your plotting. But you like the scene. Unfortunately, your scene's in the way of making the plot run smooth. So you gotta kill it and cut it. In Wonder Woman 1984, there were a couple of different times where I thought they should have cut scenes. And I think both times I had to deal with Themyscira because it just, especially the opening Themyscira sequence, that just dragged the film to a halt. With ugly costumes no Greek would have worn because Greeks didn't cut fabric, Greeks draped stuff, and Greeks didn't wear pants. Pants were for barbarians. And they didn't wear horrible one-piece jumpsuits that looked like they were made out of Sully's chair from Monsters, Inc., dyed brownish gold. I digress. So they should have cut that scene because it didn't add much to the film beyond trying to shoehorn in a theme they didn't incorporate, and I'll get to that later. But there are a couple other things, like the mall fight scene. Part of that should have been cut, especially with the whole fact that she wasn't supposed to be doing public heroism at that point. So, as I've already talked about killing your darlings and how it relates to writing a story, part two, well, number two of the whole thing, pacing. This film the pacing was horrible. It felt much longer than it was. And I've sat through the Snyder Cut, and this film felt longer than that. So they should have improved the pacing by point number one, killing their darlings. And what made this worse was the character inconsistency on the part of Diana. She should not have been doing public heroism, and having her mourn Steve for 70 years at that point just kind of feels like they made her character weak and cheap and kind of pathetic, if I'm going to be honest. She's immortal. She's from an island of immortals. She lost her aunt just before she went out to World War I. She should be mourning Antiope more than she should be mourning Steve, because she knew Antiope for her whole life. She knew Steve for maybe a week, 2 weeks. Her mourning him that long is just fine. I guess people fall in love. I don't understand it myself, but felt kind of inconsistent to the character, especially with the whole wish thing, because I get being around for a long time, you kind of get a little selfish for the happiness you want to have, but it just felt, especially with the public heroism thing, inconsistent. So I mentioned I'd get back to the themes. And my problem is they had two themes to this movie that should have worked well together, but they didn't integrate one into the plot as well as the other, and they didn't marry them together the way they should have. And that is the cheating thing to win from that Themyscira Tri-Olympics or whatever thing they were doing, because that victory wouldn't have been true because she cheated, and be careful what you wish for. Those are themes that should be able to coexist because wishing is a form of cheating. But they didn't integrate that other theme as well as they should have, even though it seemed like it was the big theme, because it's a lesson that Wonder Woman had to learn as a child. Personally, a way that could have fixed that was to significantly reduce the Themyscira sequence and have it be a flashback instead of the whole lady in gold armor thing, whose name I am forgetting. I think it was Araya. Yeah, Araya. I mean, that was interesting, but it didn't relate to the plot as much, or they could have married those two stories together. But they didn't. And it just made it feel like they were shoehorning in the whole cheating and what is what is false is not true, which is pretty generic stuff, versus Be Careful What You Wish For, which was far better integrated. And I still think that that could have been worked more too, because it was the monkey's paw going on. And the fact that it took them 2 hours of runtime to figure out it was a monkey's paw after having other stuff just felt also a bit not well executed, which leads me to my biggest problem with Wonder Woman 1984. I don't think this film is just well thought out at all. I think it needed more polishing and more work before it was released into the wilds the way it was. I think that the script phase should have gone a little bit longer. I'm not one who advocates for studio interference, as I've seen and read stuff online about what studio interference does to films. Like Cool World, that's a much more interesting making of behind the scenes drama thing than the actual film itself. Same could be said to, I think, for a couple other films where the making of and the background drama are more interesting than the film train wreck they produce. This film, I think, needed some more interference. I think it needed someone to come in and rein in those who want to just have 80s goofiness mixed in with other things without forcing them to drill down on a common theme and work with it. Another thing I think this film did wrong was it was always blatant it was the magic wish rock causing problems, the magic MacGuffin. Whereas in the first Wonder Woman film, it was ambiguous whether or not it actually was Ares up until that whole third act breakdown of the plot. I think that that ambiguity, that sort of mystery of is it actually Ares or is Diana thinking it's Ares because she's from Themyscira and doesn't know the outside world. Of course she thinks it's Ares. Here, it's just magic wish rock. People are greedy. Be careful what you wish for. Monkey's paw. And I also think that it could have been a better thing to have just gone through Greek mythology and found a trickster being in existence that could have survived the purge of the gods. Because I don't know if people know this, but the Greek gods were not the only beings in Greek mythology. There are also the monsters who are the children of a titan, actually. A lot of the more famous monsters were the children of Gaia, the titan of the earth, and Uranus, titan of the sky. The grandparents of the Greek gods, whose parents were also titans, Kronos and Rhea. There are a lot of other beings in Greek mythology beyond the ones that are popular and known. There's a lot more known to Greek mythology and, well, unknown by people. Like Hades is not actually a bad guy, he's just a guy who runs the underworld. But if you like to make the guy who runs the underworld the bad guy because we have a fear of death in our culture. Sucks to be Hades, I guess. Still, there was more they could have done with the Greek mythology angle because she's a literal demigoddess of Zeus. If there was any remnants of Hera running around, those should have been out to mess with her and ruin her day. They could have done something with that, but they didn't. Instead, we get magic wish rock and a plot that feels very badly thought out. I just think that this film had potential to be more than what it became, but because the first film was so successful, there wasn't as much oversight in Wonder Woman 1984, and I think that being allowed to run wild meant that people didn't stop to think about whether or not what they were doing was actually something that made sense for the film, or just something they wanted to do because they liked the Linda Carter show, and it was fun. There's nothing wrong with fun films, but the films have to be fun to watch, not just fun for you to make. That's why vanity projects often wind up falling on their faces. Because just because you had fun making it doesn't mean people are going to have fun reading it, watching it, sorry. Same goes for vanity projects when it comes to writing, especially with this script. It just feels to me that they needed a script doctor or another pass or something before they went to filming. Because it just feels so much like they were trying to put too much into one film. And I get it, they weren't guaranteed on Wonder Woman 3. On the other hand, they may have jeopardized Wonder Woman 3 with how badly this film was pulled off. It's a shame because the actors did what they could with what they were given. So I'm hoping that if they make a Wonder Woman 3, that they keep in mind that you really shouldn't go overboard when it's stuff that's the aesthetics, because then you become all flash and no substance, like this film is. And what frustrates me is there are glimmers of a good idea throughout this whole film, but because of how badly executed the film was, they never lived up to those glimmers. So this movie had the stronger theme of be careful what you wish for. Fans wanted another Wonder Woman movie? Well, we should have been very careful what we wished for.